joined here by Carla Shah from the film Icaro. Firstly, congratulations on your successful nomination and welcome to Berlin.
Thank you.
First question I wanted to ask, you've done a couple of documentaries before.
Yeah.
This is your first fiction film.
Yeah.
Tell us about how the idea came about, why you chose to tell this story.
Okay.
And the process.
All right. So I'm living in Rio de Janeiro, but I'm originally from England. I've lived in quite a few countries, and when I moved to Brazil, that's where I started doing cinema.
Okay.
And Icaro came out from, well, I got various inspirations for Icarus. Icarus is based on a Greek myth.
Yep.
One of the themes of Icarus is liberation and ambition. And a thing that really struck me when I was in Brazil was that there's still certain professions that exist, and one of them is working in elevators.
Yeah.
And I found that it was something that really shocked me as imagetically, and like just to see someone sitting for an entire day doing that kind of job.
It's a confined environment, isn't it?
Confined environment, and it's just kind of, it reflects a lot of Brazil's history, you know. So I really liked the myth, and that was a very strong image. And I also had quite a lot of inspiration from my father, who's a painter.
Oh, okay.
And he had done a picture of Icarus, but it was a modern adaptation. It was of a man dressed up in a business suit. And
okay.
you know, when someone, there's a crime scene and you've got like an outline.
The chalk outline, yeah.
And his outline was wings.
Right.
But he was dressed in this business suit, and that was a really strong image for me too.
So this businessman's on the floor, is he? And then he's got the outline, and then the wings have been added. Okay, fantastic.
So the idea of making Icarus as a modern adaptation came from that painting. And then the idea to put it into a Brazilian context.
Yeah, I was going to say that Brazil was from your experience of obviously moving.
Yeah.
So when did you move to Brazil?
I moved there about 5 years ago.
And so that's directly from England, or what? Obviously you said you've been in a few other countries.
I was living in London.
Yep.
And I lived there for 6 years, and before that I lived in Italy, where I grew up. And then before that I came from Japan, where I was born.
Wow.
Yeah.
So born in Japan, Brazil, very well travelled and
Yeah.
cultured. So how did you bring together, obviously, a crew, or when you're making the film and finding people to put it together? Was that difficult?
It was tricky, yeah. It's not something easy to find, people to work with, because, you're working for quite a lot of time. Even though the film was made over 4 days, there was a lot of pre-production and, visiting locations and, really getting a sense of how to do it. And it was a complicated film because also there's a dance scene in the film, which is the representation of this liberation.
Yeah. Freedom and escaping.
So we had quite a big team. It was around 13 people, and I'm guessing the
pre-production outweighed the length of the shoot.
Yes. It was about 1 year of thinking through
1 year of thinking. You went, I've got a great idea, and then 4 days and you're done.
Yeah, and then we had to crowdfund the money, which took 3 months, and so it was really a long process, but I mean it was really worth it as well.
Did you get good individual backing, or was it a lot of people with the crowdfunding? How did that?
A lot of it was crowdfunding, and then I invested a lot of my own money to do it, because there's a certain point that you can do the actual production, and I wanted to make sure that my team got paid as well.
Of course,
But we, post-production, you don't realize that also festivals, all that money, that came in, and it wasn't enough, the crowdfunding, so I've had to give in quite a lot of my own.
Of course.
But that's okay, it's part of the process.
That's the thing, that's what everyone's got to look at in terms of submitting to festivals, getting to festivals. Obviously, we were just speaking off air a moment ago, and you've said that this is the first festival you've done where you've come out from Brazil and everything. And obviously, is it a film that you want to push elsewhere? Is it still got a long cycle?
Yeah, no, it's just the beginning. I'm hoping to send it to as many festivals as possible. It's not even festivals. I would just like to have people
have it seen by people, absolutely.
Have a public who enjoy it, and that's the aim.
And visually, it's one of the things. Obviously, limited dialogue in the film, and it's one of the things we could look at, and if it's a coming of life story or religious and people at schools. So I remember when I was at school, you'd watch a film and it would be something visual that you'd watch, and then after it you'd go, yeah. And it's kind of the everyday man, as you say, in the elevator. When you're saying about the links to Brazil, is that in terms of the confinement of the slums, or?
Well, one issue that kind of comes up in the story is, well, the actor is black.
Yes.
And the thing is, I didn't want to go into race issues, and a person who works in an elevator, in Brazil, at least in Rio, it's white and black. But it does define someone socially, in a way, It's
the job role, like a binman in England, is that kind of style, or
yeah,
where you look at them.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also one of those jobs that you're not physically or intellectually stimulated
you're not
at
challenged.
all.
It's a dead-end job you're
going into.
It's a
dead-end job, and at the end I wanted to kind of bring it into a more universal story where you could associate also, moments where you're feeling stuck. It's not necessarily I didn't want to go too far into the social because it can be kind of polemic.
Yeah.
But it's a story which I was hoping to become more universal in the sense that, everyone has a point.
Whatever job there's people which would say whatever job's different comes alive, they're always going to be, and I think, I feel a bit restricted.
Yeah.
This is more visual because you're in a box and obviously working on it. How about casting?
Casting happened about during the time I was writing the script. I met Alexandria, who's the actor, and he's a street performer, so, he does a lot of theater as well, and I'd seen him do a performance with clay, and when I was writing the script, I didn't actually know him yet. I'd seen him do this performance, but I had him in my mind, and I was writing the script, and then I was telling a friend about it, and I was like, I met this incredible actor, and
he was just on the street where did you meet him?
I saw him in a performance in a small theater, and a friend was like, I don't know if I will find the actor that you want, but I've got a friend, if you want you can contact him, and it ended up being
really
that's
crazy.
That was there were a lot of magical things.
That was meant to happen when you're going to go, okay, I really want this guy, but I'll meet your guy or give your guy a call, and then when you ring him and met up with him and then found out, oh my God, you're the one.
It's the one.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And I've seen your editorial, he said that he went through some sort of training in order to get himself ready for the role.
He did some training with a choreographer because he's an actor, but he hadn't really done anything so physical. So we did bring a choreographer in, and they practiced for quite some time, and we had to also make the soundtrack, the music for the film before shooting, so he could train.
Of course, so that was one of the first things to do ahead of the dance scene, and then everything else is happening whilst he's then making sure he's ready and prepared for the role.
Yeah.
So in terms of the post-production side of it, did you have a massive input? Did you edit it yourself?
We still had some money. I work as an editor, but I actually chose someone to come, a very good friend of mine, to edit the film, because once you've directed, it's very difficult to distance
be brutal.
yourself.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why.
So it was good having someone from outside who was like, no, just give up this shot.
Get rid of it.
Let's work on this. Yeah.
So you storyboarded it prior to the film?
We did do some storyboarding. There was some things that. Funnily enough, the dance scene wasn't storyboarded.
Oh, really?
It was very clear in my mind, but the shots in the elevator, they're quite different from the shots in the dance scene.
Yeah.
So the first part of the film, the photography, all the shots are very tight, and it gives a sense of claustrophobia.
Yeah, so you're in a confined space, and that's obviously it develops then liberation, freedom, and then starts to come out.
Exactly, it's much wider. So to think up those smaller spaces, I kind of needed to visualize already the editing of the film as well. So it helped having a storyboard looking at what frames would work.
What you want to work, rather than when you come to do it, it's then going to be take up a bit of time when you could be wanting to, we need to go in closer, because then you need to see how obviously the character's face is going to look. So in terms of, as we ask a few people, budget,
so we made about 15,000 reais, which is around 3,000 pounds.
Okay.
So not a lot, but in Brazil you can do a lot with that.
Yeah,
so
fantastic.
Yeah, and I had a fabulous producer as well, so he really helped out a lot. We had a very good team.
That's the thing, obviously a team of 13 and everyone come along in the same direction. Was there anyone that caused conflict on the shoot at all?
There's always conflict on shoots, but you kind of have to take it as a thing that, you know, it's
passion,
a lot
isn't
of
it, I think,
it's
as well?
passion, it's a lot of stress, people are very tired, and so, you know, there's a lot of egos, so, you know, there's a point where, you know, sometimes it does get a bit tense. But
then afterwards everyone go, don't worry, we didn't mean it, let's kiss, let's make up,
exactly.
It was only there for the project.
You know that it's of that moment.
Yeah,
so.
It's the passion, the enthusiasm to obviously want to do a project. So this was your first fiction film.
Mm-hmm.
Is there plans to do feature films, or would you extend this?
Well, initially Icaro's, the idea for it was to make it a 3-part movie.
Oh, okay.
And so make 3 shorts that would eventually make a long movie, and each one based on a Greek myth.
I was going to say Greek myth, so what's the other ideas?
So at the moment, well, I don't know if it's going to happen yet, but one idea was to work on the myth of Medusa. And I'm still looking for the 3rd myth. I tend to work one at a time.
So you want to work through and do the Medusa one, and then when they come together, it'll be the Greek trilogy, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, they're all kind of sub-characters, you know. They don't have a lot of... they're very powerful stories, but they're not very developed in terms of, you know, when you read about it, you get a synopsis.
That's the thing. You could just go and then go, oh, do you know the story of Medusa? And you go, well, yeah, isn't she the woman that...
Yeah.
Well, people turn a stone and kind of thing, and then that's it.
But she has a great backstory as well, so...
Probably not even aware of it, so again, telling the story. Again, it is, things like this, it's educational for people to do. So prior to this, you've done a couple of documentaries.
Yeah.
Tell us about those.
So I worked when I first moved to Rio, I did a lot of video journalism. So, you know, during protests or, you know, there were quite a few happenings in the last few years, let's say, because of the Olympics and the World Cup. And also I worked in...
Because the economy in Brazil is obviously growing massively as well, isn't it? Then on the back of... But then there is always...
Yeah. And before the World Cup, there were a lot of protests going on, and so I documented a little bit of that. But I documented a lot of. There's a lot of police violence in favelas, so I did a short documentary on a shooting that happened in one of the favelas. So that was a short documentary that I made, and it went to Sweden. And I also did a short documentary, and it's kind of crossover between fiction and doc. Oh, okay. Because a lot of people who watch it don't realize that it's a documentary. It uses a lot of footage, but there are letters that I wrote to my mom, and I used a lot of footage. So you wouldn't, if you didn't know me, you wouldn't know it's about my story. It's about your story just with watching. I mean, there's some films in the festival here as well, which again, similar styles. It's new. It's a new style of filming, isn't it? So going back to the first documentary, how did you hear about the shooting? Obviously that was when you were there. Were you nearby? Well, there are a few organizations that I'm familiar with. One was Amnesty International, and they heard about the shooting, and I happened to be with the director that day when the shooting happened. So I drove with a group from Amnesty International to the favela, and I ended up registering that. I didn't think that it would go to much, but then a PhD student from Sweden wanted the documentary to showcase there, to talk about police violence and stuff. So it got sent there. Just because intentionally, I never thought that I would become a filmmaker, so I never had this thing of sending it to festivals or something. You know, it was something more to put on YouTube or
just for your own self. Obviously, to everyone does it. So what were you doing prior to then? Film? What was your interest or work?
I studied in social anthropology. Okay. That's what I graduated in, and it's interesting because documentary works very well with anthropology. I can. It's something visual that you can do and talk about. You know, well.
It's delving deep into subject matters, which sometimes people everyone's passionate about things. This is obviously something which you say want to tell the story about, and then lots of people do. I mean, my favourite type of film is documentary, because I love exploring, I love being educated, I like seeing someone's opinion of it. Even then, you might watch it and they're trying to force their opinion down your throat, or you can obviously have something which is a bit more balanced than that. Yeah, documentary. So is that where you want to go?
I think that's something I'm going to go back to, because fiction, this was my first fiction, and it is in a way documenting a certain reality that exists. But then, I'm going into the psychology of a character and imagining what it would feel like to be stuck in a place like that. And there's no dialogue, so it's very poetic in the sense that, you interpret those images the way you want to, And with documentary, I feel like, one, you're taking the immediate reality of something. Obviously, you're constructing it. Documentary is never truth.
No, that's the thing. I mean,
truth,
and editing plays a big part in documentaries and how you want to perceive and send a message. Obviously, with this, people can watch it and then they've not got to worry about the visual and then the dialogue.
Yeah.
The dialogue's not there.
Yeah.
So they're just focusing purely on images, and then they can build their own. It's kind of a journey, isn't it?
Yeah. But I got great people who I didn't. Obviously, the first people you show it to are your friends and family, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's wonderful. We love it." But then the great thing was showing it to people who had no idea what the film was about, and then they were really opinionated about it by the end. So, and they had a whole interpretation of it, and that was really rewarding.
That's sometimes a good thing to get feedback like that. And if it's from other filmmakers, where it might be giving constructive feedback, or if it is members of the public whereby they might be like, "Oh, I don't understand this," then also as soon as you may tell them, then they're going to feel like, "Oh no, I get that now. I can see that." Because sometimes it's just the confinement of being in a lift. They're going to look at it and go, "Oh, it is my everyday life, or I'm stuck in an office," or something like that.
But the thing is, in this case, for Brazilians, it's quite a strong image. It's especially the image of a black man working in an elevator. It's something that calls quite strongly to the Brazilian spirit. I didn't, like I said, I didn't really want to go into topics of race.
Right.
But for example, in the beginning of the film, the building that we ended up choosing, which Brazil has a long history of slavery. One, and the building that we ended up filming has this massive marble panel above the elevators.
Right.
So. And when I saw that building, it was so strong, because people say, "Oh, well, slavery doesn't exist anymore," and "Oh no, Brazil, everyone's happy and everything's working and it's all flowing." And then you see this massive marble panel, and it's got the Brazilian flag. It's order and progress.
Right. Yeah.
Right, and then around it are all scenes of slavery, and this is a building that's like the commercial building of Brazil, and there are 3 elevators right under, and even though in this particular building there isn't an elevator boy, there's someone who continually presses the button, and that's his job. He's there all day.
That's not a really developed career. Obviously, they're going by the fact of where Brazil were great, we're doing the Olympics, we're a growing economy, slavery was part of it, and then you come in here and then you've got this guy pressing the button, and then the visuals. So as soon as you saw it, so that was, how many locations did you have to...
We did in 3 different locations over 4 days.
And in terms of what was the toughest bit for filming wise, what bits did you need to review?
The toughest bit was filming in this building, because it was actually really oppressive, the feeling in this building. Like the other scenes we did in these really beautiful big spaces, and so everyone in the team was really happy. There was images by the sea, and then images in this beautiful old factory, and this
everyone could relax.
But this building was just really heavy, and we had to also get into the elevator to shoot the scenes, so it was really cramped, and everyone was getting tired, and that was
so then
tough.
Everyone was actually experiencing the story of the film, where by the end of the day they're getting back outside after being in the elevator, going home and going, "Oh, I've got freedom, I've got space, I feel liberated."
I suppose so.
So how was it actually filming in the elevator? Did they have to block it off, or did you have certain filming times?
We managed to get most of the locations for free.
Brilliant.
So that was really great, and they were over the weekend. So this building that I was telling you about, that was we managed to get it for 2 days, and then we got this factory space for the dance scene a day, and then 1 day at the sea. Yeah.
And all just coming together.
Yeah.
I know you're not joining us for our awards evening,
no,
but
unfortunately not.
Fingers crossed for Carla and Icaro. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you very much.